Good morning. Probably thought I wouldn't be doing this anymore, huh? I know I did. But I said that I would read to you, and by gosh, we're going to do some reading. Reading today from Climbing Maya, an exploration into success. I started waking up extra early recently, so you're going to find me very sleepy during this read. It's a good thing, he said, slowly picking up his cup. It's a good thing I have coffee. It's a bad thing I haven't drank any yet because it's so hot. Wow. So this is going to be a more relaxed reading, if you will. We're going to hang out for a couple minutes and then I'll pick up the reading. By the way, I'm still wearing my regular everyday glasses. What's wrong with me? I should be wearing the reading glasses. So let's get those on right away. Last time in the reading, let's see, I'd lost my job and I was looking for the meaning of success. And I think that's about where we left off. This was a topic that came on all at once. And surprisingly, I wrote it all at once. I kind of said to myself, as soon as it started, I said, I better take lots of notes because there's a lot going on right now. I didn't realize how my life would incorporate into the book. But as I was researching the book and taking notes for the book, I was assembling the book at the same time. It all came together rather quickly. So, I still haven't had any coffee. I was about to start reading. I still haven't had any coffee. What is wrong with me? Have you had coffee? It's like a commercial for coffee. I want coffee. Give me coffee. Hi, how you doing? I am so not awake. And now my mouth is burnt. So, hi, hope I'm still in the shot. Let's read. Chapter 6. The thing is, we already spent the money. How much are we talking about? It's a nice bed and breakfast. About $200 a night. This was about 15 years ago, so prices could have changed. Sean was famous for being cheap. Cheaper than me. That's saying something. He deadpanned without lifting his drink. And this is just for the room? They don't throw in a woman with that? I have a woman. All I need is a room. Sure, he muttered, but, well, you're paying so much. The thing is, we paid for it before I lost my job, and we're not sure what we should do. My first wedding anniversary was approaching on September 24th. That was 15 years ago. And our plan had been to celebrate it on Labor Day weekend, in the forested town of Capitola in Northern California. Beautiful place. Check it out. We never would have reserved the room if we knew I'd be out of work. Sean thought it out. You can go cheap. Don't buy any knickknacks. Don't go out to eat. How do you figure? Well, they have grocery stores. Pick up some food. It's our anniversary. Fine, but go someplace cheap. Sean was also not very sentimental. I didn't want my first anniversary with Vicky to emphasize how little we had together. On the contrary, the key here was how little money was coming into the household. The last of my final paycheck was dwindling fast. Vicky brought home a good income as a paralegal, but we still required that second income. I need to get unemployment. Otherwise, we're screwed. Unemployment insurance is a dodgy prospect, as we all know. Getting dodgier by the day. We needed it, but my odds of getting it were slim. It worked like this. If you were laid off from your job, you qualified since it wasn't your fault that the employer let you go. If you quit your job, you didn't qualify since it was obviously your fault. If you were fired, however, the fault was assumed to be yours provided the termination met certain circumstances. First, the employer had to give you some kind of warning. Second, well, it didn't matter because I was warned that my job was in danger. But that warning had not been in writing, it had only been through inference. Also, I'd received a positive review only 2 months before being fired. The trick, Sean, an old veteran at collecting unemployment insurance, assured me, is that you get your hearing. You're going to need a hearing because the person reviewing your case will immediately put the blame on you. Me? Why? Because you were the one who was fired. Yeah, but what about my review? What about the fact that they never gave me a written warning? That's what the hearing is for, he said, calmly patronizing me. That's when you present your case. How long can that be? He took a sip of his soda. That hot afternoon, we were sitting under the shade trees by his home, drinking ice-cold sodas. His home didn't have a yard either, but we co-opted this patch of green. He needed to get out of the house for a little while, but didn't want to go far. Thus, the chairs and sodas offering that feeling of being far from home while still being able to hear inside, in case the phone rang or Megan called his name. 2-3 months, he said into his soda can. What? We can't afford that. He shrugged. Sorry, that's just the way it's worked for me. You'll know when you get the letter. Having registered with the state unemployment office online, I expected to receive notification through the mail, but how long would that take? I wanted to pray that it would arrive soon. But I couldn't. Religion for me has always been a serious subject, probably because of the incredible disposability I saw it given as a child. My mom raised 3 children by herself in the 1970s, back when such a thing was not commonplace, when it would even turn a few heads and evoke tones of concern. You poor dear. I remember that we were Presbyterian after my father left us, attending the Wilshire Presbyterian Church in Santa Ana. I can't tell you too many specifics, as this took place when I was still very young, long before I was even a teenager. Although a few details still surface whenever I think of it. We received baskets from the church a couple times each year. We'd be at home, and we'd hear a knock on the door. This usually occurred around Thanksgiving or Christmas. My mom would answer, and someone from the church would be there. Just thought you might be able to use this, they'd say. They knew times were hard, and 3 kids must have been a handful. I never considered it charity, but relished in the amazing variety of goodies that always came along with the baskets. Chocolate, grits, soup mixes, and bacon. We lived simply in my mother's house. We couldn't afford it any other way. This sense of giving, I would hope, has remained with me all these years. I believe my own sense of tolerance stems from that time when every Christmas the church lit a menorah candle, set at the front of the small stage beside the pulpit. I remember nothing being said about the candles, but I remember that they were lit. There was no sense of this is what other people believe, strange people, but rather a sense of shared tradition. It's only right since Christianity appears to owe so very much to Judaism. This candle lighting and my interest in it might also give clues to my teenage fascination with homemade pyrotechnics. With homemade pyrotechnics. I was a firebug. Everyone in that church was family. Everyone knew one another. There were potlucks and caroling at Christmas, grape juice at the sacraments, hugs from old women who thought I was a cute boy, and sturdy handshakes from old men who looked me straight in the eye. I can't recall a name or a face or a word, but I recall that feeling of family. Coming from a broken home, years often passed between my dad's visits. It was like fine wine, or, in a child's words, kick-ass Slurpee. Maybe that's why I felt such an impact when my mom switched churches. I'd already lost one family, and now I was losing another. Well, that was a mistake. I fogged up my glasses. Maybe that's why I take religion so seriously. My mom was putting me through another divorce. And what good was religion if not for a sense of consistency? In a child's mind, how could you divorce God? Worse, there were so many other teams, denominations, professing to have an exclusive contract with God. We've got God here, join us. For a while, we went pell-mell from church to church. I remember one church so solemn and boring that it was like an anesthetic. Drip, drip, drip. I was an old pro at sleeping through church, but this one wouldn't allow me to wake up. Then I remember the Pentecostal church, the screaming and the yelling and the shouting. My mom pulled us out of there before the service ended. When I was 11 years old, we finally found a new home at the First Church of the Nazarene in Santa Ana. They might have been the same city, but this was on the other side of Santa Ana, near Tustin. Back in the late 1970s, it was known as the good side of town. The church was poor. Nope, I skipped a line there. The church was populated mostly by those wealthier than us. My family had always been poor, that's where you get that, but that had never been made quite so clear. Perhaps that heightened awareness kept Keith and Audrey from going. It was just me and my mom. But I embraced our new church family. They all seemed so open and easygoing, so unlike us, with our infighting and our constant stresses. The church's mention of the Nazarene was a reference to Jesus Christ, who was believed to be from Nazareth. Whatever your fairy tale tells you. Unlike the Presbyterians, the church's emphasis was on Christ alone, no menorah. While I found that exclusion strange, everything else was similar. I could settle into this family and feel comfortable. I joined the youth preteen group, open to those 11 to 12 years of age, and quickly became best friends with the pastor's son, Phil. Yes, I was best friends with the pastor's son. I'll let you read into that what you will. Phil was a level-headed one, but I was hyperactive. He came across smoother, but I made the best jokes. We took part in wholesome activities designed to satiate our need for a little bit of rebellion. The Rockathon, for instance, where we raised money for charity by rocking in rocking chairs all night long. Phil and I were the only ones to stay up all night, being awake even after our adult supervision had fallen asleep. Being best friends with the pastor's son brought its privileges. If it was at all possible, I felt cool, and it helped me feel like I belonged. But my little world kept getting rocked by reality. And my mother always seemed to be the one doing the rocking. When the church had a summer camp for the preteens, my mom took advantage of the opportunity by telling everyone about our financial state and how little we could afford it. When my Boy Scout troop held a father-son campout, my mother explained my situation to some of the folk at church. Miraculously, one gentleman offered to take my dad's place and bring me to the campout. This was long before child molestation became as common as the flu in our society, or so it seems. I didn't know if my mom was trying to sabotage the respite of reality I'd formed at the Nazarene Church, but it angered me. Sometime before my 13th birthday, I could sense the first alien twinges of teenaged resentment jostling the childish affection I felt for her. As I reflected on these times, a name came to mind. Darlene Clark. Who was she? Vicky asked. Darlene was a girl I had this incredible crush on. And those things can be powerful to a 12-year-old. Learning she was going to summer camp and knowing Phil would be there made me want to go to camp pretty badly. Even after my mom assessed that we couldn't afford it, I pushed as only a child can, and by some miracle, donations by the church and my mom's scrimping and saving, I was able to go. Camp Cedar Crest was the name, located up in Running Springs, a region in the San Bernardino Mountains. As a church camp, we were sure there would be a lot of emphasis on Christ, or so the parents believed. The counselors knew better. It was called a tween teen camp with kids as young as 11 and as old as 13. The counselors knew what would happen when you put teenaged and even pre-teenaged boys and girls together for a week. There were panty raids to help diffuse the enormous sexual tension. There was even a midnight hike, but I'm getting ahead of myself. As one of the younger kids there, I was already at a disadvantage. I wasn't good at sports either, and at that time, any kid who wasn't good at sports knew he would get mocked. Video games have helped level the playing field a bit. At the camp, our leveler took the form of a full-grown Doberman Pinscher chained up by the snack shack. Coming from a poor family, I didn't have too much money for snacks. Somehow, though, I overcame my fear of dogs, befriended the Pinscher, and earned the respect of other kids who knew better than to pet killer dogs. But I spent most of the week pining over Darlene. If only I could talk to her. That opportunity was presented by the kids who weren't as impressed by my friendship with the ferocious canine, led by Phil. To prove my young manhood to them, I had to ask Darlene on the midnight hike. The odds were against me. I had little to offer. I was a frail, weak kid who was no good at sports and told bad jokes all the time. But I steeled up my courage. I asked. And she turned me down. Crushed, I spent most of the time after that moping about. But then, by some miracle, she changed her mind, and we assembled on the night before our last day there, along with dozens of other young couples, for the midnight hike. The idea was simple. My hair keeps falling in my face. The idea was simple. The counselors would lead the kids up to a clearing where we could all look at the stars, and they would give a talk. I've since forgotten what material they covered in that talk. I remember walking beside Darlene most of the way, trying to start a conversation, while the other couples walked with their arms around each other, sneaking off the trail occasionally to make out. Counselors beat the bushes for stragglers. They must have been quite fearful of what was going on. But I was the perfect gentleman, and Darlene was annoyed. I had not yet learned there are times when it's okay not to be a perfect gentleman. Finally, this older kid walked up to us. He grabbed my arm and put it around Darlene, and then grabbed her arm and put it around me. "That's how you're supposed to do it," he informed me sternly. After he was gone, I meekly apologized. Something inside of me thought she didn't want the intimacy. At the clearing, the counselors talked and talked. Then they told us to look at the stars, but all the kids around us were kissing. I looked at Darlene, she looked at me, but we didn't kiss. A blunder by any other name would have reeked just as bad. The next day we were packed into buses and shuttled back to our homes. The local kids and I were dropped off at a nearby church to wait for our parents to retrieve us. I didn't see Darlene. That ship had sunk. Phil sat next to me on the bench and said, "My dad's going to another church soon, so I'm going to be moving." Before he could, my mom changed churches again. This turmoil shifted something inside of me, and I resented the change. I started attending Release Time Christian Education, a program at school where students could exchange physical education for Bible class. It's not a good exchange rate. An odd way of rebelling against one's parents, if ever there was one. There was little hope for me where sports was concerned anyway, along with reading. My teacher, Mrs. Nichols, became something of a surrogate parent, and I became a born-again Christian. Yes, that's right, I became a born-again Christian. For the next 4 years, I studied the Bible, and I prayed, and I worshiped, and I always made a fuss about not attending my mother's church. When my religious beliefs collided with my mother's, something extraordinary began to happen. I told Vicky as we sat out on our patio for dinner. She took a sip of wine. What? She wanted me to go to her church, but I wouldn't go. She said that if I had any problems with her church, I should talk to her minister. I shook my head. What a mistake that was. Vicky shrugged. Why? My mom joined the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which believed that the seventh day of the week, the Sabbath, fell on Saturday, not on Sunday, when most Christians worshiped. I didn't fight going to my mom's church because of the day of the week. That issue wasn't important enough. I was looking for a way to rebel against my mother. In hindsight, she probably shouldn't have made it an issue. What did it matter which day of the week I wanted to worship? And so I went to her minister and said these words to him. What did it matter? If God really created the world in 7 days and insisted that one be set aside for worship, why did it matter that the day was Saturday? Why couldn't worship be on Thursday or Monday or Sunday? The extraordinary thing this did was turn me from a believer into a questioner. It wasn't enough to ask the importance of the day I chose to worship. I started finding other questions. Where were heaven and hell? Traditionally, these were thought of as up there and down there, meaningless distinctions given what we know of the universe and our own planet. Why would a God of love hate gays, non-believers, and people with political platforms that differed from the church? How could any church lay claim to the truth when the truth was out there in so many forms? To be a person of faith, it's important not to question things too much. That's what faith is. Belief regardless of proof. I'm not saying that the questions freed me of faith or that it's better to leave your faith behind. I don't know if that's true. All I know is that I'm trying to understand, which is why I ask questions. That's what this book is about. I may never understand success, but my questions have consistently pointed me there. Anyway, for many years after, I tried to hold on to my faith. I read the Bible regularly. I read Aquinas. Then I read the Gnostic texts, the Gospel of Thomas more specifically. Its Eastern flavors brought me to the Bhagavad Gita. Then years later, I studied Buddhism. People refer to me as an atheist, and I tend to let them. The problem with that is how the word atheist possesses the negative connotation of having given up, putting faith aside and leaving it by the roadside. That isn't exactly me. I lost it, sure, but I'm still looking. I will not pray for it because I don't believe it's a gift that some spooky Santa-like God can just give to you. For that matter, I'd rather not rely on Christ Kringle. We usually only pray to him when we don't get what we want, and that has to reflect poorly on us. So, I would not pray for unemployment benefits. I'd want to see how that played out. I'd wait to see how that played out, sorry. Fortunately, there's just 2 more pages because I'm running out of steam. I think I need to get out of here, I said as I helped carry in Vicky's bags when she got home from work. As a paralegal, she usually came home from work with her purse and an immense tote filled with papers, texts, and I haven't a clue what else. Her stress level was usually high after a long day, so my timing probably couldn't have been worse. Her look approximated a glare. What do you mean? Out, away, for a day or 2. I was thinking about this weekend. She put her purse on the kitchen table, and I laid her tote next to it. Then she looked at me, waiting for the rest. My resume isn't getting the traction I want. I've been applying for everything, but I'm not getting calls. You're not even through the 2nd week yet. You've had 1 interview. Yeah, and we saw how that turned out, right? She could see my fear. It had been building for 2 weeks. Where are you going? San Diego? To see Tim? Was she thinking I would go somewhere else? She nodded and said, I need to go to the bathroom. That's my wife, very direct. The downstairs bathroom was a few steps away through the living room, and she hustled in there without shutting the door, so I looked away. We need to decide about Labor Day, she called. It's too late to cancel the reservations, but not too late to cancel the weekend. Do you want to cancel the weekend? Her startled reply, no, flew at me. But is it really worth it to spend more money, or do we... She flushed, and moments later came back with, I know you need time away and that you're stressed and that a whole lot's going on, but... I held her close. It's our 1st anniversary. I calmed my voice, hoping I wouldn't betray what I was feeling about the odds of finding a job. How I thought we should squirrel away every cent in case I couldn't get a job and we lost our house. I had no idea how we'd make the house payment without... I want to go someplace nice with you. You deserve it. You've been wonderful. We kissed. Do you think it's a good idea? Probably not. But we can be careful after we get back. We'll keep our budget tight. We'll only go out to one nice place, but we'll make it very nice for our anniversary, okay? And I'll make Tim pay for my meals when I'm down there. Maybe he can cover my gas. I'll keep this very cheap. Okay. Our Shiba Inu pawed at the door, and Vicky left my arms. Come on, she said. Suki wants out. And that, my friends, is chapter 6. Chapter 7 is going to be a little longer, so we're going to split that next week. We're going to do that in 2 parts next week, and I'll be going down to San Diego to see Tim. I don't think Tim is watching these readings, so I'm not going to tell you too much about him without him seeing this video. But I will tell you that he's one of my dearest friends, and I just think he's terrific, and I haven't seen him in years, and I miss him terribly. I miss everybody terribly in the middle of this whole COVID thing. If I know you, I probably miss you too. So I hope you join me for the next reading of Climbing Maya, or from Climbing Maya, when we read chapter 7. And don't forget, that Climbing Maya is available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook from every place you would think that it'd be available, online, on the internet. As always, you can find me at kenlasalle.com. The stuff after this will tell you all about that. Ready? Let's go. And there you have it. You've just survived another Ken LaSalle video. For more information about new releases, projects in the works, or even stuff from the archives, head on down to kenlasalle.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and all around social media, just as long as it's called Facebook or Twitter. Thanks for your support, as always. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, and I'll be back soon with more nonsense.